So, I want to start off by saying welcome back to the channel, and if you're new here, welcome. If you're a fanatic of everything entertainment, then this is the channel for you. But in today's movie review, we'll be talking about 2000's The Crow Salvation. So, let's get into it. So, after the major disappointment and respectful film that was City of Angels, I didn't really know what to expect out of this film, Like, I was hoping, I was thinking, well, it can't get any worse than City of Angels, so we can only go up from here, right? Well, let's get into that. But before I get into what I think about this film, I do have one memory with this film. My parents had this film on VHS or DVD. I think it was VHS. And I remember I was watching part of this movie in my room or my sister's room, and my dad came in, and it was the scene with the strip club, and he was like, "Turn that shit off." Like, I was like, but it has Mary Jane in it. He's like, I don't care, turn it off. So like that's the only memory I have of this film. And then, throughout the years I've heard that people like this film more than City of Angels or Wicked Prayers. So like going into it, I was like, okay, it can't be any worse than City of Angels. So what I think about this film, let's find out. So with that being said, let's get into the positives with 2000's The Crow Salvation. So I'm a fan of the acting in this film. It's nowhere near as good as the first, but it's a big step up from two. At least there's some memorable performances in here compared to the second one, because even the people I think did okay in the second film weren't anything to write home about. Like even Vincent Perez and the girl that played Sarah are in my mixed section with that film, and then everything else is just negative. At least I have some performances in here that I thoroughly enjoy. And you can't talk about the acting without talking about the cast, which there are some people that show up in here that I'm like, oh my god, they're in this film. I can't think of their names right off the top of my head, but I think it's Fred Ward and then a couple other people that I recognize, which I'll be putting their pictures up on screen. But yeah, Kirsten Dunst is in here. She sort of plays like the Sarah character. I think she did really good in here as well. And like I said, the cast in here, some people that show up that I just weren't expecting, and I'm like, they're in here, and they all give like memorable performances. I think they all did really good. I think the side villains in here are pretty good as well. Like the guy that plays in the Fallout, he's in here. This is one of his early performances, and I think he does great in here as well. But that whole pack that's responsible for the main character's fiance's death, they all did really good in here as well. And then the main villain in here, which is played by Fred Ward, I think it's Fred Ward. If it's not, I'm very sorry for getting his name wrong. But I love their performances. I think they all did really good. Like compared to the second one, it's like The Empire Strikes Back. And then the story, once again, it is a rehash basically of the first film where, unfortunately, our main character has to avenge the rape and death of his fiance, and it does feel a bit similar to the first film, but I think it does do the story justice, unlike the second film, where that one is a father trying to avenge the death of his son, and I think they just put some really weird shit in there that just doesn't really work. In here, I think it works. It is a bit of a rehash. It should be going in the mixed, but it's a story that you can get behind in any film. Also, the opening to this film is great. Like, this changes things up where our main character is on death row because he is wrongly convicted of murdering his fiance, which is something that we haven't seen in the franchise so far, and I think that was unique. I really love that. And then, it shows him dying on the electric chair, so that was a really cool opening to start the film with. And I like the fact that the makeup in here is not makeup. It's our main character, after he peels off the burn wounds and the electrical wounds from whenever he died on the electric chair. I like that the scars were like already on him when he peeled his skin off. I thought that was really cool. It's not the best makeup in the franchise, but I love the aspect behind it. I love the uniqueness of it too. And another cool thing in here is like this film is a whodunit, sort of like the Scream franchise, because you don't know, because there are like 4 or 5 different side villains and villains in here, which I already spoiled it, but you're always guessing who was the perpetrator, who was the main one that took out our main character's fiance. So I really like that. I like that it's a whodunit, which is sort of new in this franchise as well. They do some new things with the story with this film, which I really like that. So with that being said, let's move on to the mixed aspects with this film. I feel as if this film doesn't really have a distinct feel to it. The first two did. I love the vibe and aesthetic of the first. The second sort of tries to copy it, but I think they sort of made it its own thing. But this film felt very bland, and I think that had something to do with it being a straight to video release. They didn't have the budget that was as high as the first or second film, which you can definitely tell. There are some props and, backgrounds that you can tell are cheaply made. But it's not the worst that you've seen. It's just a big step down from the first two when it comes to vibe and aesthetic. So it doesn't really have this distinct feel to it. It feels like a very bland and serviceable film. So with that being said, let's move on to the negatives with this film. Even though they do change some things in the story department, once again, there is some callbacks and to the first film, some lines, some story aspects to it. It just feels very similar once again to the first film. And it feels like they can't really do nothing new with this franchise. Another thing that I don't like in here is the runtime, the pacing in here. It's the same length as the first film, but I think that this one could have been trimmed by like 10 to 15 minutes. This could have easily been like an 80 or 85 minute film, but instead it's an hour 40 or hour 45, somewhere in there. It could have been trimmed quite a bit, and it would have felt tighter. It would have felt a bit better. So, yeah, that's another thing I didn't like about this film. And then you can't talk about the Crow franchise without bringing up some cringe line deliveries from either the main character or side villains, or just villains in general, the main villain. Everyone has a moment to shine with the cringe and the line deliveries, and some of them just made me roll my eyes. But like I said, all the films, even the first, has some scenes like that and line deliveries like that. So, like I said, you can't talk about this franchise without bringing that up. You know you're watching a Crow film when that happens. So I'll admit, I do like this film quite a bit more than the second film. This is the definition of what kids nowadays say mid, which is why I'm going to be giving The Crow Salvation an overall grade of a 59%. Like I said, there were some things that I wasn't a fan of, but it's a big step up from the second film, which I thought was just atrocious. But let me know in the comments what you think about this film. Is this your favorite Crow sequel? Let me know. But with that being said, I just want to say thank you as always for watching my videos, and hope to see you in the next one.